Welcome to Senior Beat. I'm Cindy Olsen, and today we have with us award-winning photographer, filmmaker, and author Todd Gipstein. Welcome.
Pleased to be here.
So, Todd, for those in the audience, I got to know you because we did the Ledge Lighthouse tour, which was amazing. Mm-hmm. And on that, we started talking, and I found out what an amazing photographer you are and your life experiences. So thank you for coming on today. I want to kind of just chat you up about that. Sure. How did you first get into photography?
Well, when I was about 12, my mother gave me a camera, and I was not particularly athletic kid. I liked movies and projects and that kind of things, and she thought that a camera would be a good way for me to explore the world and document what I found and share it with other people. And I took to it. She liked photography. My older brother liked it, so I guess it was in the family DNA.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Now, Mom, yay! Thank you, Mom. So with that in your family history of it, but do you have a specialty of photography that you?
Not really. I've been doing it for 50 years now. So along the way, I've done just about every type of photography there is. Okay. I mean, everything.
Everything.
From, portrait work to travel to, I've done aerial, underwater, fashion, product photography, fine art, museum photography,
nice.
Historic places, for a little bit of everything. So I don't think of myself as a generalist, as a specialist, but more of a generalist. And pretty much anything that comes my way, I'll give a shot at, except for weddings. I've been a wedding photographer when I'm the secondary person, but not the official one, because that's too nerve-wracking.
Yes, it is.
If you screw up an assignment for National Geographic, they'll forgive you. If you screw up a wedding, they'll hunt you to the far corners of the earth.
That's true. You don't want to
I've
make
never
them
had the courage to do a wedding photography, but short of that, I've pretty much done it all.
That's funny. Well, now that you mentioned National Geographic, so how did you end up working with National Geographic? That's such a huge thing.
Well, it was interesting. Right out of college, through a family connection, I showed them my work, which was kind of slideshows at that point. They couldn't have been less interested. And so I said, fine, and I went to work in New York for Time Life, and then I went back to Boston where I'd gone to school, and I created my own business, Gipstein Multimedia. And for about 14 or 15 years, I made mostly documentaries.
Okay.
And competed in international festivals, and they saw my work. And one day the phone rang, and they said, hi, it's National Geographic, and we've been seeing what you're doing, and we need a show about geography. Mostly they were looking for a writer, because good photographers are fairly easy to find, but good writers who understand media are hard to find.
Right.
And they saw my work, and no one in the building could figure out how to write a show about geography. The magazine writers didn't know how to write for multimedia slideshows. Wow. The TV writers didn't know how to write for it. I did. So they hired me to do that show, Geography Voyage of Discovery, and then another show, and then it was their 100th anniversary in 1988.
Wow.
And they put on the most amazing evening where they recognized people like Jane Goodall and Richard Leakey and John Glenn and Robert Ballard. And they commissioned me to do a little profile of each of these artists, plus a 100-year look at National Geographic's history.
Okay.
And one thing led to another. They became my biggest client, and then an opportunity came up to work full-time for them as a director of multi-image and a producer.
Oh my gosh.
So I got rid of my business in Boston and moved down to Washington, and 31 years later, I've still been working with them.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now, that's like such a dream job for so many of us who just dabble in photography, so I'm in awe of you.
Well, I had a real dream job there because I was kind of a department of one, and I would suggest an idea for a show, and they'd say, sure, do it, or they'd come to me and say, do a show about photography or the environment or the oceans, one or two words, and really gave me creative freedom to do it. So I could go through the files, pick the pictures I wanted, interview explorers, photographers, whatever the case may be, go in the field and shoot. And they kind of were hands off, and then I'd arrive with my finished show, and they'd tell me if they liked it or not. And luckily, they never really made any changes, so it was really a dream. I had more.
So they went from not being interested at all in your slideshow into letting you have free reign and pretty much 100% approving all your work.
Yeah, creative freedom.
incredible is that?
Well, it worked out. I understood them. They didn't understand me, but they let me do my thing, because half the time they said, we don't know what you're doing, we just like the end result.
Yeah.
So it really was a wonderful place to work. They had tremendous resources. The topics were fascinating, as you could imagine.
Right, yeah.
I mean, all over the map, all over the world, all over the subject matter you could imagine, and it was fantastic.
Oh my gosh, that's such an incredible, excellent thing for you to have fallen into, and
Yeah.
only because you do such a phenomenal job.
Well, there was never quite the job like mine, and now that I'm not full-time, it's not, because
There's not
technology.
yeah.
So I found a 15 or 16-year period where everything just came together, a perfect storm of kind of
There you
creative
go.
freedom, and it worked.
Wow. So you mentioned kind of like, they gave you these amazing locations and subjects. What would you say maybe one of your favorite or favorites locations were?
Well, it's interesting, because I think when you do this professionally as a photographer or as a documentary producer, you have to find something interesting and compelling, beautiful, whatever, about everything you do.
Well, yeah.
And that said, it's hard to have a favorite because the topics were so different. I did a piece about the Titanic where I met a survivor of the Titanic, which was a 100-year-old survivor. It was pretty amazing. Or I went to China, or I went to Peru. And, every assignment, it's not all as glamorous as people think. There's always problems. The weather doesn't cooperate. The museum director isn't there, so you don't get the access you thought, whatever. It is work. But there was always rewards of something everywhere I went, a special experience, a special moment, a wonderful memory that came out of it. So picking a favorite was really hard, and I was also lucky that I would come up with an idea, something I was interested in, and they'd say, okay, that sounds good, we'll put that in the educational work we do, go out and do it. So I was sort of indulged in letting me do some of the stuff I wanted to do.
It sounds like the liberties they gave you just enhanced your abilities to do more for them.
Yeah, and that was kind of unique there, because usually as photography you come back and there's lots of editors and people who have a hand in picking it.
Yeah.
Or a writer, you hand off the script and someone else realizes it. But I wasn't really in that situation. I pretty much had my own freedom to do what I wanted, and I got away with it.
That's fantastic.
They liked what I did, so one show they killed, they didn't like. It was just not quite what they expected. But other than that, it all went very
I'd say
well.
your track record is pretty awesome.
It was pretty good, yeah, it was good.
So as far as subject matters, do you prefer like the drama of certain locations, or is it more like just the actual geography of a location?
I think, as I said, almost every place you go, some are more stingy with providing you with great
I'm
stuff.
sure, yes.
And you have to pull it out, or you have to kind of do plan B. A lot of times plan A doesn't work at all, so you do plan B. But also being the writer-producer, if I was in the field and something wasn't working, I said, when I get home, I'll change the script, because something good did come up that I didn't expect.
Oh, yeah.
So there was the serendipity that often worked well, and I could come back and say, okay, I'm going to, slightly tune it in a different direction. But my favorite thing would be to go sort of have a general topic, maybe like doing the Imperial Tombs of China, and here I'm in China, and just go wander around and see what happens in front of me and my camera. I mean, that is a joy to me. And the trips I can take, like I've been to Cuba, or we were, doing some villages in Europe. You can just go out for a day, wander around, with no real agenda, just see what happens, just observe life. To me, that's the real fun. Engage people, take some portraits. That's what I love the most.
So you've kind of hit on a few things, but one of my things is, especially with National Geographic photography and some of the photos I saw that you have, how do you engage these people from just all over the world?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. One is you learn, first of all, I try to keep my equipment fairly minimal, so I'm not arriving with like Martian death rays, strobes and all this stuff where it looks like you're assaulting them.
Right.
I do magic, so sometimes I'll be at a little tavern or in a village, and I'll take a pebble and make it disappear, or make a coin change. And people see you then as just someone who's made a pebble disappear, and they gather around, they start to laugh, and you've broken the ice.
Yes.
Then you can take out your camera because you've developed something. And magic is a universal language, and kind of photography is, and you don't always have to speak the language. I mean, you can go up to a mother and say, oh, you've got a beautiful baby, and somehow convey that.
Right.
Or a child, can I take a picture of this village is so beautiful.
Right.
So I think the trick is to spend a little time, even if it's only a minute or two, trying to sort of warm people up and understand that you're not threatening them, you mean them no harm.
Right.
And I think a lot of it's your body language, your expression, how you kind of come across, the vibe they get from
Right.
you. And if you're threatening or hiding behind bushes with big lenses, they'll sense that.
They want you to be the creeper guy.
Yeah, people have radar. You don't want to stalk them. And you come right up to them. If they don't want their picture taken, they'll let it known, and you respect that. You just say, forget it, it's been nice, and move on.
Yeah.
But I'd say 90% of the people I've encountered in the world are flattered that you want to take their picture.
Yeah, I think you definitely have the ability to make the connection, and the photos I saw, you can see it in their eyes, that there's a true connection and a true wanting and okay that you're taking their photo.
Yeah,
and it's just incredible. It's touching.
Well, I've said there's probably 3 or 4 score pictures I have where in an unguarded moment, a stranger will kind of reveal their soul to you.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you're lucky you see it, but if you're even luckier, you get it on film to share with other people.
Right.
And those are very special moments. There's lots of moments that you have that are pretty good, but every once in a while, someone just reveals that and makes that connection and gives it to you.
Yeah.
And that's very special. And those are my favorite pictures, the people pictures.
Yes, it's just, like I said, I get chills looking at some of your photos, and it's just the connection you absorb from it. When you mentioned your gear, you don't come across with, you're not intimidating, you're not that guy who comes up with all the cameras hanging.
I used to be.
What do you use? Oh, you used to be?
I used to carry a bag with 20 lenses and 5 camera bodies, partly because you had to change films.
Right, but now
you don't. And I've trimmed it down over the years. And the other reason, besides intimidating people, is you get paralyzed by decision making because you open your bag. Go,
yeah, like,
do I want this lens? Do I want that lens?
And meanwhile, the scene's being.
Elvis and the Martians have left the scene, and you've missed the picture. So I think, do you limit yourself? Sure, you might miss pictures by not having a certain lens or whatever.
Right.
But you're always missing pictures. I'm missing pictures talking to you right now.
That's true.
There's pictures
I was
all
thinking
over,
that too.
all the time. So you make your peace with that, and you say, okay, I'll get what I get with the gear I have, and not worry about it. I did a project that I hope to show folks around here. It's actually on YouTube. They can go see it, called X100, because it was the little camera I was using.
Okay.
And for 1 year, I walked 1 mile from our house to the Avery Point Lighthouse with one lens, because the lens didn't come off the camera, 35 millimeter. That was my limitation. It was 1 year, 1 mile, 1 lens.
Oh, how fantastic.
And it was a fantastic assignment because I had to really work with those limitations, which turned out to be not very limiting. And it was just fun to walk out the door and say, whatever is today, I'll see.
Now, when did you do that?
I did it about 5 years ago.
Okay, so technology is pretty adept now, but so you basically said, no, I'm not going to use any of that.
Right.
I'm going to limit it to this.
There's one little camera I got, which I love, is a mirrorless. The first one I got is a Fuji. And the lens didn't change. It was a classic 35 millimeter lens, which you can do a lot with. If you want to get something zoomed, you move closer with your feet.
I was just going to ask you that. So you did a lot of physical movement of yourself.
And I didn't do every day, but I went out if it was foggy, if there was a blizzard, if it was a nice sunset, whatever. Just as the mood struck me, it was very kind of zen. I would just walk, because it's a beautiful walk along Avery Point to the lighthouse. And I didn't have to have jet lag. I didn't have to have TSA or anything. I just walked out the front door and I was
passport
shooting.
needed.
Exactly, and it was all black and white. And it's on YouTube, and it's gotten about 60,000 views. A lot of photographers have found it an inspiration to say, okay, I don't have to work for National Geographic and go halfway around the world.
Yeah.
Because really, what is exotic? If you live in Bora Bora, Africa, Groton is exotic.
True, very true.
And I wanted to make the point that you don't have to go far to make beautiful pictures. It's all here.
It's all up in, it's what we see, it's how we vision.
Exactly.
So X100 on YouTube.
On YouTube.
Okay. So
under my name. I have a channel. Just go there and look at my name and you'll find it.
Okay, we'll remind everybody later.
Very local.
So you talked about the gear, you talked about your favorite places, your subjects, whatever.
I actually didn't finish the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
About the gear, because I drifted, but now I use 1 or 2 cameras simply because I don't want to change lenses and get the sensor. So I have, for example, I went to Israel in March and I shot with 1 lens and 1 camera the whole time.
Really?
Just an 18 to 135, and I got everything I needed. So to me, the gear is the least important part of photography. The most important part is the person behind the camera and the mindset and the heart set you bring to it. You can take terrific pictures with modest cameras with your cell phone, and you can take lousy pictures with fantastic cameras. And I've seen both. And I think people get too hung up on gear, and they think gear is going to, make them a better photographer, and it really doesn't. It facilitates it. Any more than a $100 hammer makes you a better carpenter than a $10 hammer.
That's true. I like that. So for somebody who's out there just traveling, they're going on a trip, let's say the Grand Canyon even, they can just bring 1 camera or 1 camera with 2 different lenses and make the most out of it.
Absolutely. Whatever you have, you make the most out of it. We were just in the Grand Canyon in August.
Oh, really?
And I shot, I think, with my X100, which has a fixed 35mm lens, and I got some very nice shots, and I shot a few with my iPhone. But yeah, don't worry about what you don't have, worry about what you do have, and don't worry about the pictures you're not getting, worry about the ones you are getting. And all of that said is you have to really be observant, you have to be in the moment. My wife teaches yoga, and they have that term mindful.
You're very mindful,
You're totally, and photography and yoga are very similar that way. You're very immersed in the moment, you're connected to the moment, you're focused on it, you're observant, and I think that's where photography really happens, is really being immersed in it, observant, and enjoying that moment as much as you can, and the camera documents that. Your reaction to it, and that's all. You have to be the one seeing the beauty and talking to the people and understanding what's happening, and the camera just records that.
Oh, I love it. So I just had a question. It totally just zapped my mind. Oh, so in your home, what's hanging on your walls?
Very few of my pictures.
Really?
I only have 1 or 2 up, I think.
Really?
Well, we collect things.
Well, yes, you travel the world.
Yes, but we have art, and it's very few photographs, partly because I have a lot of pictures that I absolutely love that I've taken, but I give a lot of lectures and I make films, and I wouldn't say I'm sick of them, but I'm sick of them. I really don't want to look at them over the mantelpiece when I've been seeing them lecture. And it would be hard to pick one, so we have very few of my pictures up, and that might be true of a lot of photographers, is they're so close to their work, they want to get away from it.
I'll have to ask your wife what her favorites are. But so, say you're out for an afternoon. How many photos are you taking? I know for myself, I could take probably 200 photos in an afternoon.
Well, like when we were in Israel, we were always on the move. I probably took 2,000 because I knew I wasn't coming that way soon.
Oh, okay.
But what I try to do, having shot film for so many years, is make every picture count. I don't spray and pray, as they say. Take a lot of pictures, hope something is good.
Pay more attention.
I try to make each one count. And I think if I had any advice to give anybody about becoming a better photographer, is not to be quite so casual, is to really look through that viewfinder or at your phone and realize that when you leave the situation you're in, that's all you're going to have is that little picture. You're not going to have the birds chirping or the grandeur of the sunset of the Grand Canyon. It's extracted. It's taken out of context. So really pay attention when you snap that picture. Is it right? Is it composed well? Is it really what you want? Is it a good memory? And focus on it, because once you leave, you don't get a chance to do it again. I think people, that last 5% of attention, they kind of don't do, and there's a little bit of sloppiness, and that makes a big difference.
I agree. And thank you for that. That's great words of advice. So I have one more question, and then we're going to have to finish up soon. But how much editing do you do? Say you have those, 20 fantastic photos. How much editing are you doing after?
It's interesting because we send a lot to National Geographic where they put them in their archives and then sell them and use them in magazines and books and so on. And Marcia, my wife, who's really my editor, will do an edit of a trip to Iceland or Cuba or whatever for the Geographic. I'll do an edit thinking of what do I want to use in film I'm making about Cuba or in a lecture, and it's totally different.
2 different editing. Yeah, perspectives, yeah.
So out of the 10,000 pictures we shoot, she'll maybe send ultimately 500 or so geographic, and they might pick 300 to put in the archives.
Okay.
And I'll probably keep, more, because when I'm making a film, I never quite know what I want. And I
Right.
can always go back and find it.
Yeah.
So it all depends on the final use, and we have very different paths we take.
I could talk to you all day long. If somebody wants to learn more, say even myself, a fan, how would we find out more about Todd?
Well, I have a website, which is just www.gipstein.com.
Okay.
And I have a Facebook page, which is Facebook Gipstein Books.
Yep.
Mostly the novels and things I do. And you can go to those sites and they link together. And also YouTube, I'm putting more and more of my films up there for everyone to see.
Okay.
And that would be probably the best way to do it.
Thank you for being on Senior Beat today.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.